What does it mean to be a woman? This is actually a question that I've been asking myself for some time now, if not always consciously, at least on an unconscious level. And this is because when I was 19, I was diagnosed with a congenital disorder called MRKH, which is just an abbreviation for a really long name that's difficult to say. So we're just going to leave it at that. You can always look it up to find the full name. But basically what I was told when I was 19 is that I was born without a uterus, and therefore I wouldn't be able to carry a baby. I was told that surrogacy was an option because the ovaries are completely there and functioning properly, but there's no uterus to carry the baby. And on the same note, if there's no uterus, then there's no shedding of the uterus lining and therefore no menstruation. So this is usually when women discover that they have this condition. It's pretty rare. It's about 1 in every 5,000 or 4,500 women that are born with this condition. And there's different types and I guess degrees to which this can affect you. So some women are born without a uterus and without a cervix and a vaginal canal or a shortened vaginal canal. Other women are born with a uterus, but it's not fully developed, so there's no menstruation, and carrying a baby is also told by the medical industry, that that's not a possibility, but they may have their cervix and their vaginal canal may be normal or may still be shortened. So there's different combinations, I guess, of symptoms of this. And then there's also MRKH type 2, where other organs can be involved, like kidneys and things like that. In my case, I was diagnosed with MRKH type 1. So just the uterus that was affected and the vaginal canal a little bit as well. Some women do need surgery to lengthen their vaginal canal. That wasn't my case. I can have sexual relations without any issues after doing some exercises that were basically recommended by my doctor. But so while receiving this news was very impactful and very traumatic for me at that age, which I'm sure it is for every single woman who receives this type of diagnosis, there's a lot more to it than you may think, which is one of the reasons why I decided to create this video to help spread awareness and just shed some light on this condition, because most women who receive this diagnosis are very they keep it very secretive. Most women do not talk about it because of the shame and sometimes also the anger and resentment that comes with it. Anger against, I guess, just the world, life, God, why is my body this way? But also there's a lot of, anger towards oneself or towards your own body for not sort of performing or functioning properly, completely as a woman's body should, quote unquote, should, right? And so I think a lot of it is just beliefs and stories that we tell ourselves because of what we hear in society, because of what people tell us, right? Every woman has their period, or this is what every woman does. They bring life into this world. They create life. Without women, we wouldn't reproduce as a species. And this is all true, generally speaking, but that's why it can bring up this question of, so then what really does make you a woman? If I'm born as a woman, if I'm born a female at birth and have all the, female hormones, the chromosomes, all these things, but I'm missing a very vital part of the female reproductive system, and I'm not experiencing these things that most women do on a regular basis, every month, what does that mean for me, right? And sometimes, women like myself who are diagnosed with MRKH, we do experience some of those menstrual symptoms from month to month, when it comes to PMS or mood swings and even cramps and things like that, but there's no bleeding. I can remember in high school, when all of my friends were getting their period, just how kind of left out and confused I felt, because I was already starting to question, is there something wrong with me? What's going on? Why have I not experienced that yet? And in my case, I was very athletic, and my mom also began menstruating at later compared to most. So we just kind of assumed it's just, it just hasn't happened yet. It's gonna be later for you, until eventually I was like, okay, well, I'm 19, it still hasn't happened. What is going on here? And then of course you go to the doctor and you get some examinations, leading to then an MRI where they give you the diagnosis. And so I want to tell you a little bit about my experience. Of course, each woman is going to have a slightly different story or experience with this. There's a lot that determines that, such as the support you have around you at the time of finding this out, and how, your perception of it, as well as the actual symptoms or the degree to which you have this condition. In my case, at 19, and this was just like a month basically before I was getting ready to travel to Ecuador, and for an indefinite amount of time. I was thinking to stay at least a year, but I didn't have everything planned out to make that happen, but that was my goal. Anyways, I was not in the mindset at all of, having kids or anything like that. I had always dreamed of and wanted to, start a family. So I did have that kind of in the back of my mind, and I knew this would greatly impact my life in that regard. But I really just shoved everything under the rug and didn't worry about that at that time, because that just wasn't as relevant for me. But what really hit me right away was just the fact of having like the missing parts of the female reproductive system. I felt like I was missing something, and so something was wrong with me. I wasn't enough, right? And physically, literally, technically, from what they told me at that point, I was missing something. And the story actually takes an interesting turn a few years later, and I'll get to that in a moment. But this was really what affected me the most. And it came down to, my womanhood. I felt like my womanhood was just being stripped away from me. Like, I'm just at that time in my life where I'm really becoming a woman, yet I don't have, and I'm not experiencing all these things that, most women are experiencing. And the anatomy of my body is not 100% complete in that way either. So I felt incomplete. And that's what really affected me the most. Externally, you cannot tell. The body, the physical appearance, externally, even genitalia, all looks 100% normal. It's all, these internal parts that are either missing or just haven't fully developed. But I still felt very incomplete and confused and betrayed by my own body. I felt so angry with, I don't even know. There was really no one to blame. But you want to blame someone. Looking back now, I was angry with, I guess, God, life, angry with myself, angry with my body, which I'm realizing now is a very kind of dangerous path to be on if you don't resolve that quickly enough, because your body is your life vessel. And, whatever thoughts and feelings you're sending to your body is going to react according to that. But I did have anger against my body. I felt betrayed by my body. I felt resentment towards it, bitterness, and also even towards, the doctor who just gave me the news, which she really wasn't her fault, of course. She was just the messenger. But even many other things and people in my life who either didn't fully support me, maybe the way that I thought they should or that I needed. But in that time, I was also not wanting or looking for support. The doctor said there's these support groups that you can join and things, and I was like, no, I don't need that. I'm fine, I'm strong, I don't need to join a support group, like, come on. And so I really just shoved it all under the rug and went off on my travels. But few years later, but still, even though I didn't address it, my life was never really the same after that. You always have it in the back of your mind, no matter how much you try and ignore something like this that really was affecting my identity. You can't completely just ignore it and go about your life. Even if on a conscious level you're ignoring it, it's still there, kind of haunting you and following you around everywhere subconsciously. So looking back now, I realize how a lot of the self-doubt and just lack of feeling worthy and things like that, or being enough. My confidence level and self-esteem were dramatically impacted. They were not great before this, but after this, they, just took a plunge even further, and that created a series of events in my life. There were great moments in those years that came as well. And I met my husband, for example, which was an amazing thing, and he's been so supportive and really just accepted me for who I am as I am. But there was also a lot of these underlying lingering feelings that I was ignoring that were still there, kind of running my life without me even being conscious of it. So fast forward to about 8 years later, 7 or 8 years later, when my husband and I really began to seriously think about starting a family. Not think about, but we wanted to start a family. And I told him about my condition early on in our relationship, but neither of us were there yet. So we're like, we'll figure this out when we get there. And now was the time to figure it out. And it was hard, it was hard to deal with that. And I kind of was forced to face that reality at that time. And a lot of my friends were starting to have babies, and there were babies all around me. That was really difficult as well, because this is something that I wanted. And I've realized that many people, there's just so many things that we do and that we say that we don't realize, it's just so normalized, but we don't realize that if you don't fit that box, that normalized box, then, you're left out of that generalization, which then makes you feel isolated or rejected or left out, or like there's something wrong with you, right? But anyways, as I started to tell friends later on, when my husband and I decided to start the adoption process, which was something I was always drawn to, something I always knew I wanted to do, was to adopt a child. However, knowing that I didn't have the choice to choose adoption over, actually carrying a baby and conceiving a baby, it just felt really unfair. I wanted to make that decision for myself and not feel like this is kind of the only option. Surrogacy is an option as well, but it's not something I was ever drawn to or felt was, the right step for me. And actually nowadays they're actually doing uterus transplants. It's a new thing, I think, in the last 10 years or so. It wasn't around when I first got diagnosed, but also when I first was told that I have MRKH, but also, and it's still, and it's still quite risky. I think there's been a total of 70 uterus transplants in the entire world so far. And I don't know the success rate, but there have been women who have given birth and, carried their baby to term and have a healthy baby after that. But that's a huge ordeal as well. It also is high risk. And after the surgery, you still have to go, or at least it's recommended to go through IVF after that. And then it's still a high risk pregnancy. And of course, none of that is guaranteed. And that's a really long, and I can imagine, emotional process as well in and of itself. But anyway, so I knew I wanted to adopt, and yet there was a lot of self-doubt and feelings of unworthiness and things around that time. I know I also want to adopt at some point, but I also want this opportunity to carry a baby and just experience that in my life as a woman, right? I did eventually accept where I was and decide, okay, we are going to go through this adoption process, and everything happens for a reason, and this is going to work out, and it is what it is. So we started the process. We have an amazing, beautiful daughter. We adopted 5 years ago now, and she just is amazing in so many ways. She's charismatic, she's talented, she's loving, caring, and affectionate. She teaches us so much. She has just completely changed and transformed our lives, and she's a perfect fit for our family. I believe we're the parents that she needed. It just worked out so perfectly, and it couldn't have been any better. I feel like I couldn't have birthed a baby, a human as amazing as she is, to be honest. So I'm really, really grateful, and I really do feel like this is just the way that she was meant to come into our lives for whatever reason, right? But she was destined to be with us. We were destined to be with her, even though she didn't come into this world through my body, through my womb. And anyways, there is a lot of challenges with adoption. I'm not going to say it was all easy. It definitely was not. But then again, pregnancy and giving birth to a child and having a new baby on board, I'm sure it's not easy either, right? It all is relative and it all has its advantages and disadvantages. But an interesting thing happened shortly after we started the adoption process, before we got the call saying that, before we got the call from the adoption agency, which we did it like nationally in Ecuador through like the government. I think it's the only like official agency there. And I love the way they do it. To get approved as adoptive parents, you're kind of on a waiting list. And when they have a child who is now, legally declared that they can be adopted, they look through their sort of waiting list of parents and families and choose who they think would be best for that child according to the child's interests, personalities, and what their needs, and then looking at the parents and what they're able to give, what they're experienced with maybe, and their lifestyle and where they live, to see what would be the best match and what would meet their needs. So you have no say in regards to who it's going to be. Now, of course, you can't say yes or no. I'll tell you like a little bit of information and then you decide yes or no, and it just goes from there. But it worked out so perfectly. But interestingly enough, before that happened, but after we had been approved as adoptive parents, I was experiencing other skin issues and things. So I went for an ultrasound, and my doctor actually said, yeah, here's your uterus, after I told him that I didn't have one, because that's what I was told at the age of 19, right? And I looked up on the screen and there it was, and it was like, what? Are you kidding me? But it was amazing, of course, amazing news, and it really lifted a weight off of my shoulders. I just felt like, oh my gosh, like I'm not, like this isn't missing. I am, quote unquote, complete, at least, on an atomic level, I guess. That actually really helped me, but then it also brought up a lot of other questions and was very confusing, right? So why was I told at the age of 19 that I didn't have a uterus? And now I think it was probably some sort of medical error, whether, the doctor grabbed the notes from somebody else, or the exam results were mixed up. I have no idea, but it just goes to show as well that you can't always believe what doctors tell you. And I'm not saying don't get medical advice and don't listen to them, of course, but yeah, I was living with this belief that I didn't have any uterus at all. And after getting that news, it really helped and kind of relieved, and I felt really relieved, but at the same time, it didn't fully heal the wound of the original diagnosis at 19, of course, because I still wasn't menstruating, and I probably never will, or be able to carry a baby. So it was like, okay, so I have that, great, but it's still not fully functioning. I'm still not able to do all these things that most women can do. And so I just kind of left things there, went on about my life. About, I guess, a year and a half later, we adopted our beautiful daughter and just dove into motherhood, which was a whole amazing, beautiful, crazy whirlwind of experiences. And I still never really fully addressed, I guess, the wounds and, everything and the trauma that I had with being told that I have MRKH. So I just kind of continued about my life the best that I could, but what I've realized is that you can't run away from these things, and the more you try to run away, the more it just chases you. And even though we started our family and it was all just as I imagined, even better, yet I wasn't fully enjoying life. I wasn't fully present in life. I had a lot of anger still built up inside of me that I had never really expressed or released, because, both at the time when I was 19, when I received the original diagnosis, but also just throughout my life, I still didn't really talk to people about, like, even if I told them the situation, I never really talked about my feelings about it, right? And how it actually affected me. And so, yeah, there was a lot of anger and shame and things, but it was all kept deep inside. It wasn't really expressed, it wasn't released, and, emotions are there to deliver messages. They're there for us to learn a lesson, and we're supposed to feel them and then release them. This is something that I've learned that I'm learning now, as I never did that. I was never taught to do that as a kid, and I didn't really have that example either. I was, like many of us, I was told things like, don't cry, don't be a crybaby, you got to be strong, and these things. And get to the point where I found a lump in my breast and got that surgically removed, only for it to reappear almost immediately after. Originally, they had done a biopsy and said it was benign. Later, they said otherwise after they had removed the first one. So I really started to question things. And I think even though it was not easy, sometimes we need like a wake-up call. Sometimes we need to, I guess, learn the hard way. And so that's what's really motivated me and driven me to learn more about this, about myself and what's really going on with me, right? Get to the root cause. Like, there's got to be something going on here, if it's because I never really addressed the root cause. I never fully healed, right? So it's time. So I basically decided it's time to face this. It's time to share it, shed some light on it, not keep it in the dark, because, the light is love. And so we need to shed light on these things and we need to talk about them. And it's been very important for me to do so, which is why I wanted to create this video, even just this entire YouTube channel, to not only bring awareness to MRKH and women going through, and women who, are going through these things, whether it is MRKH or something else with fertility. I hope that through my own experience, through sharing about it, potentially help anyone else who's going through this or something like this, so that you don't get to the point, to help you just realize that it is important to find support. You don't need to come and like create a video about it like I'm doing. Just like I've been holding it in for so long that I felt like I just need to do the complete opposite and just completely let it all out and put it all out there. But just having someone who you can talk to about it and really get into those deep feelings that you have, or just find another way to express them, maybe on your own. But also the support is really, really important. Whether it's, talking to people who've been through the same situation, or just, a good friend or someone who you can trust and share these things with. It is so, so, so important to do that, no matter how hard it is. The longer you wait and the more you hold it in, the harder it is to then share it and express it later. So if you need a little bit of time to just process things on your own first, I get that. I also felt that way, but I let it go way too long. And I hope by, creating this video and just creating awareness to this, that you can learn through my experience and release those emotions and find the healing and acceptance and self-love that you deserve and that you really need to thrive, but also are so worthy of and deserve, just like all of us. And that's what it comes down to, I think, is this self-love. There's so many things in this life that can kind of take that away from you, or start to damper down, the love and acceptance we have for ourselves. I know there's many people on the planet today going through these things, whether or not they have any fertility issues or anything like this, right? And any other medical or, issues. But definitely when you're born into this life missing parts or without like a fully functioning, without a body that's fully functioning in every way compared to like what's normal, definitely do question some things about your own worth and whether you're enough just the way you are, even though you may not be, even though your body may not look like or may not be able to do all the things that most of other people's bodies are able to do, right? I know I'm not the only person going through this. My desire is that this, if this is something that you're going through, that this can help you and support you and maybe even give you courage to talk about it, to comment down below and let me know if this is something you're going through or something similar, or if you know someone who's going through something like this, or if you have before in your life, what did you do to overcome it, or to, I guess, find that self-acceptance and self-love, and not let that sort of dictate your life, and not let it define you as a person either, because it doesn't define you. You are not even your body. And this is an amazing realization that I've had that's helped me so, so much. And maybe everyone will not agree with me, and that's okay. And I definitely did not think this way before, but what I understand now is that, yeah, I'm not this body. I'm not my thoughts. I'm not my words. I'm not my feelings. And I'm not this body. I'm a spiritual being who's come into this life in this body. This body is my vehicle, which I use to, go about this life and experience everything that this life has to offer. But I am not my body. I just have a body, right? And my spirit, my true essence of who I am, is just inhabiting this body. And at some point it will, or I will leave my body and I will continue to exist. I'm just energy. We are all energy. So energy cannot be created or destroyed. It's always there. We are always there. We may transmute into some other form of energy, but we are always here. And that detachment, or being able to separate myself like that from my body, also helped me to find that self-love and self-worth, and not be defined, or not define my self-worth according to my body and its conditions. Another thing I've learned from reading and watching Dolores Cannon's books and her seminars and things, if you haven't heard of her yet, she basically has this hypnosis technique that she developed, and basically through this technique she's able to speak with people's subconscious. If you haven't heard of her, research it, look into it. It's really truly amazing, all the things she talks about. I won't get into all of it in this video, but some of the things that she has learned through taking people through this process, and the things that come up through the people that she's working with in these sessions, has truly been amazing and transformed my whole way of viewing life, where I believe now that before we come into this life, we decide and we choose our body, and we choose different things that we're going to encounter during life. Yes, we still have free will, so we may end up going down a different path, but we choose our bodies. And so, like, if I chose this body, it was probably for a reason. It was probably for a reason, whatever reason that is. I'm still on the journey to finding that, but I'm getting to the point where I am choosing to trust that, right? Choosing to trust that decision that I made, and know it's for a greater purpose. There's something to learn from this, or it's part of this life experience. And so that's another way to look at it as well that really helped me, which potentially can help you as well. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel, as I will be sharing much more. I will be sharing many more videos just like this, and talking about all the different things, all the different mind-blowing things that I've been learning on this journey as I research beyond the typical medical recommendations for these different conditions and experiences, and just things like Dolores Cannon's work, but so many other people's work and modalities and things that I've been learning as well, to kind of release and heal, the trauma that I've had in my life, not only just with these things that I've mentioned, but things from childhood, so many things, even ancestral trauma. It is amazing. So I'll be sharing about all of this, and let me know if there's anything in particular along those lines that you would like to hear about, and I'll consider making a video for it. But thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you, beautiful, and I'll see you in the next video.